Thank you so much. All right, a couple ground rules. We're going to have 5 speakers, 10 minutes apiece, give or take. We do ask that whatever you bring to this area, you take away from this area. We don't want to wear out our good welcome and leave litter behind. We do have a gas station over here where bathrooms are available. We do ask that you buy something so that we're not just mooching off their bathrooms. This is a long tradition because the very first year they ordered porta potties, but they refused to deliver crappers to the atheists. So we have to use their bathrooms. We're just going to stick with that. So be nice to them, be kind, and realize they're providing a service. Monica Burns is first, and she is going to come up and talk about what she does, and she's also involved with Black non-believers. So Monica, if you want to come on up and get us started off. Give her a big hand, Monica.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Monica.
It's a little windy, and I've got notes. I wanted to start off by thanking Chrissy and the Tri-State Freethinkers for having me back this year. I'd also like to apologize. My husband and I have to cut out pretty soon. We're going to Nashville for a family gathering, so I won't be able to stick around the way I usually get to. But I do hate not being able to stick around because this protest is so important. Let me quickly give you a little bit about the Kentucky Free Thought Convention. It's September 21st. We've got in the KYSS under the green banner there, we've got these. You can get $5 off of admission, which is $10 if you type in promo code ARKProtest. It's $5. Its general admission is $10, $5 for college students, free for high school and below. So Tracy Harris, Tyrone Wells, myself, Heath, Enright, Hemant Mehta, Andrews, Seidel, Nick Fish, Bart Campola, and there'll be some workshops and things that you can do there. So please log on and come out for that. But again, as I said, this protest is so important given the assault on church and state and separation happening across, church and state separation happening across the nation. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Project Blitz yet. If you are not, go online and Google that. That's basically where evangelical Christians are writing packages to put together to give to legislators to help them with how to introduce bills such as the one that we just had passed by Governor Bevin to allow Bible literacy courses in our public schools. And just as the ARK encounter, that is public school. It's publicly funded by us, and they're teaching, it's not being taught anthropologically, it's being taught as some form of American history. How they're doing that, I don't know. But Project Blitz is a threat to the separation of church and state. It's a threat to women. It's a threat to the LGBTQ community. It's a threat to the atheist community. And frankly, it's a threat to other Christians who don't hold the evangelical worldview. So, and it's the playbook that Governor Bevin used to introduce that very bill. And that's why we're seeing it all across the nation. But if you visit the Americans United website at au.org, you can see more information about Project Blitz. They've got a couple of videos you should see. We really have to start to stand up. In the way that we come out for this protest, we have got to stand up because they have money, the evangelical Christians. We've got to start to donate more to the ACLU, to Americans United, in order to have attorneys, to battle against these things. We all know the last time that we let Christian indoctrination wield its sword against people. It's not a world that any of us deserve to be in. And even now, we're born into this culture, or any culture. We're quickly taught a set of beliefs in order to be accepted in our communities. And our parents and peers teach us how to act in those communities and what to believe and how to be accepted in that world. And we typically become masters at circular reasoning with this, and we're blind to our own cognitive biases and personal prejudices. But we're very adept at spotting cognitive biases and personal prejudices in other people. So as atheists, we easily see how theists, especially biblical literalists, do the same thing, and how they take a conclusion and they seek ways to back into that conclusion when pressed. This is how we got Ken Ham's ARK Encounter, which is a monument to anti-intellectualism. But indoctrination is not simply religious. Indoctrination is cultural. So let's take a step back. I want to discuss the type of thinking that has allowed many of us to shake the indoctrination of religious fairy tales, like Eve being able to eat an apple that would have, kept us all, hello, 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 hello. Yeah. Who? Did she say? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So, but anyway, I said let's take a step back and let's take a look at how we were able to shake these religious fairy tales, such as Eve being able to eat an apple that would have made everyone mortal, men living in big fish, Noah's worldwide flood, and zombie saviors. First, we recognized that we harbored cognitive biases. We asked questions. Why do I believe this? We stepped back outside of our beliefs to observe neutrally. We considered what we thought we already knew, and we considered the sources that we got those thoughts from. We analyzed the information with an open mind, and we sought more information. We did research, we investigated the other side, and we analyzed that information. That's when I got really heavy into reading Dawkins, and I was watching YouTube videos and debates, But then once you realize, you change those views in light of that new information, and now we're out here protesting and we're communicating and implementing a change from using indoctrinated beliefs and advocating for critical thought and sound reasoning. So I'd like to ask you, outside of religion, how many unexamined indoctrinated beliefs are you still carrying around? When presented with stories and opinions from women that women do not have the same privileges as men, or that black people don't have the same privileges as white people in the United States, what is your belief? Have you recognized that you have cognitive biases and personal prejudices? Have you asked questions? Have you considered the sources that helped you formulate that belief? Have you sought to analyze new information or data outside of your current circle? If you have, then you've changed your beliefs in light of that, and you have new conclusions, and you're affecting change by being an ally. Being an ally is communicating and implementing change in marginalized communities. Critical thinking is deliberate, it's not instinctual, and it's not something you do 100% of the time. You have to decide to examine your current beliefs. Your beliefs matter to communities of people and determine how you will stand and how you will vote and what side of history you're going to be on. White supremacy, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, how did you come to your current beliefs on those topics? If you haven't taken the 5 steps outlined, you may likely be basing your beliefs on indoctrinated views. The United States is a white supremacist nation. The United States is a misogynistic nation. The United States is an LGBTQ+ phobic nation. Transgender people, namely transgender women, more specifically black trans women, are assaulted and murdered at alarming rates, yet critical thinking and engaging with the data reveals that sex exists on a spectrum. Sexual orientation or sexuality exists on a spectrum. Gender, though socially constructed, also exists on a spectrum. Perhaps the indoctrinated belief of binary sex, binary sexuality, and binary gender deserve critical thought. I had a back and forth one time with a guy online, and he told me that the way that you know your gender is to look between your legs. He said it was simple biology. Now, I've never studied anatomy fully, but there's nothing simple about the human body. And having a simple-minded view of biology does not equate to biology being simple. If this is how you believe gender is understood, you are beyond a doubt using indoctrinated beliefs. You have not researched this, or you're deciding to ignore it, and you're no different than Ken Ham. You may as well just build a big wooden vulva and penis and place some placards around that say, I don't know what I'm talking about, and charge admission. You can call it the binary encounter. Critical thinking can be difficult. Adults are married to their beliefs. This is why critical thinking skills should be taught in school, not as a separate subject, but in how to approach the data that's given in each subject. Unfortunately, Kentucky is leading the way in allowing Bible study classes in public schools. These glasses are killing me. Though they are electives, at least 6 states, Florida, Indiana, Missouri, Missouri. That's what I heard. I was saying it wrong. My bad. North Dakota, Virginia, and West Virginia have introduced legislation this year pushing for public schools to offer Bible literacy classes. Now, in school, teaching facts is fine, but not teaching children how to engage with those facts is not. So like, think back to when you were in high school. We were all taught that black people were slaves. We were taught that they were freed by Lincoln, and after the they were freed by Lincoln after the Civil War, and then enter Dr. King. So let's ask ourselves some questions. Since we've noticed that we have cognitive biases, let's move on to step 2. Where are the white people in that scenario? Where are the poor white people in that scenario? They were the majority. What was their role in white supremacy? The United States, as I said, is a white supremacist nation. But have you ever noticed how white supremacy is never considered a topic at all in schools? Ever notice how white supremacy is never considered a topic alongside the subjugation of black people? What went on in the lives of black people between the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement matters. Why was there a Civil Rights Movement necessary 100 years later? If these topics had been critically thought about, what would this nation look like if your grandparents, parents, and you had been taught to engage with the information, to critically think about racism and its impact on not just black people, but its impact on white people? The government deliberately, systemically sought to destroy black lives through policies, policing, exclusion, and terrorism. When stories come across your newsfeed, don't use the indoctrination of a white supremacist society to determine what is happening in the lives of black people and other people of color. Recognize that you have biases and prejudices. Ask questions, consider the sources that helped you formulate your beliefs, seek and analyze new data from sources outside of your circle, and change your beliefs in light of new conclusions and affect change. Be an ally. Being an ally is communicating and implementing change in marginalized communities. It is not enough to be not racist. Effecting change is being anti-racist. It is difficult to not jump to the conclusions we currently hold, especially on topics that challenge our indoctrinated beliefs. But because your beliefs directly affect people, you owe it to yourself and to them to examine them honestly, each time. Critical thinking is not easy. It isn't something you automatically do. It is a skill that you access. If you begin using this skill on the big subjects, things we're indoctrinated to believe, like race, sexuality, sex, gender, it won't get easier, but it'll become habitual. Your brain will always use mental shortcuts, accessing your biases and prejudices first. But with critical thinking skills in your back pocket, you'll more easily recognize when you've done that, and it will become habit to second-guess beliefs you've not examined but were indoctrinated to believe. Finally, stop pretending to know things about subjects, topics, and people you haven't studied or talked to. It's anti-intellectual and it's far from open-minded. Too many people hold bigoted views because they choose not to engage with the evidence. It is critical in the lives of minorities and marginalized communities, and quite frankly, it's critical to you that we question the indoctrinated beliefs of a society steeped in white supremacy, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia, so much so that it would elect Donald Trump to lead it. So question your beliefs. Thank you.
All right, she got to mention one of my favorite stories, the whole Adam and Eve thing, which ties into this boat back here that won't float. And of course, you may remember that Eve ate from the tree the knowledge of good and evil. So after she ate the fruit, she possessed the knowledge of good and evil, and then she encouraged Adam to eat the fruit, which means it must be a correct thing to do. It must be a good thing to have that knowledge of good and evil. So we should thank Eve for setting us free from this very evil deity that they make up. But anyway, just a reminder again, bathrooms at the gas station, please buy something. Be careful you're in the sun. Don't get burned. Stay hydrated. And of course, after we're done with all these talks, we're going to walk 2 by 2 up close to the front gate. And also notice we've had some drivers come by with love. Not everybody. You can tell the Christians when they're not giving us love. But people, we do represent people from this area. So by show of hands, or actually by applause, in case someone's listening to the audio of this, who is from the tri-state area? Give us applause. All right. Now also by applause, who is here for the very first time? Nice, nice. Who came from a state that's not one of the tri-states? That's me. Hey, okay. Who's the farthest? We got Chicago, a couple Chicago. Northern Michigan? Texas? Okay, who's here from Texas? Give us a big hand. All right, we got a couple from Texas. Oklahoma. That's like the middle of nowhere. All right, so we're going to move on here, and next up is Aron Ra. So if you'd come on up, I'll let you introduce yourself as if they don't know you already.
They do, sir. Good to see you again. The previous speaker talked about, having biases and prejudices and everything. Just imagine when you have your belief system, and as everybody here probably understands, when you have your belief system build those biases and prejudices into you. And in some cases, whether it's racism or homophobia or whatever it is, some of these biases or prejudices that they build into you also build in a response, so that you think that maybe a violent reaction is somehow appropriate if you should encounter one of these other people, or if somebody tries to change your mind about something. Imagine that. If somebody, when I talk with believers, I often hear that, that they'll tell me that they can prove that God is real. Okay, fine, bring it. I'm interested to hear. You think you can prove it? Bring it. And then what they do is they quote from the magic book of fables. The circular argument of assumed conclusions, right? It's the question-begging fallacy, and that appears to be all that they have on that point. But then if I bring up that I can prove that evolution is a thing, they run like cockroaches when you turn on the kitchen light, at least in my house. But just imagine when you have your prejudices built into where you have to have a violent reaction, or where you have to shut your ears, where you're taught that you're not supposed to listen to reason, that's the problem, that you are supposed to believe not for a reason, but because we said so. Believe what I say because I say. Ours is not to question why, ours is but to do or die. I asked a babysitter when I was 8 years old how Jesus turned water into wine, because I knew that there were certain molecules involved, right? H2O is one. I knew that alcohol and fruit juice were involved in the other one. How did he make that change? Did he swap? It turns out all he had to do was add carbon, but she, of course, didn't know the answer to that question. She just says, "How dare you question God?" Because somehow, a book that is absolutely wrong about absolutely everything, and embarrassingly so, that says a lot of stupid shit we can prove is false, is somehow the Word of God. I have to think that if the same guy who devised DNA is the same guy that wrote the worst geneticist in the world would have to be a better author than the group of ignorant primitives who wrote that book, that collection of fairy tales. And they are fairy tales. We often get the counter apologetics where we have the creationists saying that evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. That's what they tell us, right? But you know what is a fairy tale, right? A fairy tale is a folklorish story with a moral that involves characters like giants, witches, dragons, wizards, and animals that talk and act like people. That's what a fairy tale is. Now look at Genesis again. Look at the Pentateuch. Look at most of it. This is the Genesis, at least, is literally fairy tales by definition, and they're trying to twist that into something else. There was a time when Ken Ham, the owner of this facility, was coming to speak as the keynote speaker in Houston, Texas, for the Texas Homeschool Association. And the fact that they had him as their keynote speaker, I thought was outrageous, and it showed that the Texas Homeschool Association did not care at all about educating children, that they only wanted to indoctrinate children. Why do they do that? They want to convince the kids to believe in this nonsense, because religion is a means of manipulation of the masses, and so you have to control what they believe in order to control how they vote and how they react to certain emotional stimuli. That's what I'm talking about being built-in reaction. So that when somebody tells you that there is no God, or is it evolution, or is a thing, or challenges any of your perspectives, you're no longer thinking in a scientific bent. You're not interested in hearing what is the reason why and then weighing whether it has any justification or not. Instead, you immediately plug your ears and react violently or stoically, refusing to believe that which we can prove. That's frustrating to me. So I went down to protest Ken Ham, and a couple of you, I'm sure, have heard this story before, but the Texas atheist, there was a Texas atheist group that was the largest geographic atheist group with 2,200 members at the time. They challenged Ken Ham to a debate, and they chose as their champion myself. And my conditions of that was that we were going to hold that debate at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and that neither Ham nor I could make a profit off of it. Because I know that that's the whole reason that they do this. This is a money-making scheme. This is a political scheme. This is to evoke power over people. That's it. That's all. And this is so for people like Ken Ham don't have to get real jobs because he doesn't want to have to work for a living. He certainly doesn't want to have to pay taxes, and he's made that very clear. So I was going to have this debate with him, and Ham says that he's not going to debate me. So he said he would only debate someone with a PhD. So P.Z. Myers, who was a professor of biology in Morris, Minnesota, threw his PhD into the ring and said that he would debate Ham on one condition, that I remain in the debate as his partner. And then we got no more communication from Answers in Genesis. Nothing. Dead silence. And I feel kind of honored that I might have given Ken Ham an idea because 4 months later they announced my replacement in that debate against Ham, Bill Nye. I wish I could have coached Bill Nye so that he wouldn't do the debate in Answers in Genesis so that they could charge the ticket price and make $20,000 profit just on that night. But it got worse than that because people saw how badly he lost. And universally, everybody said that they lost. 93% of the Christian Today followers voted in their survey that Ham lost that debate. People who believe in God and in the boat still said that Ham lost that debate. I wouldn't have done it where they could make so much money, and then the donors for Ken Ham realized how badly he lost and donated more. Because somehow the truth doesn't matter, and it's disturbing to me. When you get it, have you ever got into conversations with Christians and you start giving some detailed fact that we can absolutely prove is true, and then they start arguing, well, why does it matter if it's true? Why can't we believe what we want to? That is so irritating to me. You are welcome to believe in any fairy tale you want. You are not welcome to mislead and deceive other people's children with bullshit. That I find insidious, and for whatever reason, although everybody thinks about the kids, I actually care more about the little old ladies that I see in these audiences because they're very often undereducated or they wouldn't be in this place in the first place, and they're susceptible, and they're being used for their money because where do you think most of the donations come here, right? For all religion, not just creationism. That's from these little old ladies who are being built into believing, and because they can be programmed to be afraid of everything. And that's another thing. Why are we not afraid of every damn thing like the believers are? They're programmed to be afraid of everything so that they will turn to people like this for their defense. So irritating, so insidious. So, I had another story to tell you, but I seem to have forgotten what it was. So I guess I will leave you with that. And Phil, thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you, everybody, for showing up in all of this stark sunlight. It's close to 90 degrees here. We get very little cloud cover. It is hot as hell, but I guess we should be used to that, right? Thank you much.
Another big hand for Aron. He happened to remind me, one of the things that I think about Christians is that if your deity, you claim, created the entire universe, but he needs you to impose his will, basically means that God is actually impotent. So if your God wants me to do something or believe something, he should do it, and you should get the hell out of my face. Once again, if you want to use the restrooms back there, buy drinks, make sure you stay hydrated. We do have some coolers with ice and water and colas and some Gatorade. Please do not get dehydrated. If you can give me a big hand for Kelly, she's up next. Kelly, come on up. Come on, louder.
My name is Kelly Helton, and I'm the equal rights advocate for the Tri-State Freethinkers. And this is our 4th year protesting the ARC encounter and standing up for science and reason. People often ask why we should care that they're building a $100 million boat, which it's not actually a boat. And people often ask why we're back here protesting the ARC encounter every single year. Well, I'm protesting to ensure that science and reason are still being taught in our schools. Creationists are teaching children that the world is 6,000 years old and that the evolution is just a theory. One of my teachers told me that our Constitution was founded on Moses and the 10 Commandments. This is completely unacceptable because our Constitution was founded on the fundamental principle of separation of religion and government. So when the Ark Encounter receives up to $10 million from the state of Kentucky for their religious propaganda while remaining discriminatory in hire practices, I will protest. When creationists lie to children, what should we do? Protest. When creationists invade our public schools, what should we do? Protest. When creationists discriminate against LGBT communities, what should we do? Protest. But what are we supposed to do when creationists invite us to public meetings with the Banana Man and give us banana splits? I mean, I think we should go. It's free ice cream. And I actually went when I was invited. And I had some amazing conversations. Not about the Ark, not about religion, just a normal, civilized conversation. And many people were excited to meet an atheist. And to their surprise, they realized atheists are like any other person. Just by being there, we have started to normalize atheism. And we actually made friends with some of the creationists who's been over for dinner and games and just had a good time. But don't worry, I'm not going to the dark side just because they gave me free ice cream. The reason the Ark protest has been so successful is not because of what we do here. It's because of what we do after the protest. Because of this protest, public schools have enforced the separation of religion and government. Take a look at Grant County schools. Before, they had 14 pages of violations. And with the help of the Tri-State Freethinkers, they resolved every last one. Because of this protest, some schools are now teaching comprehensive sex education that is medically and scientifically accurate. And because of this protest, we have friends and allies all across the country who are motivated and inspired to get up and get out and get involved with their school board, city council, and state house meetings. Now, this isn't an easy fight. There are those among us who would like to see the Tri-State Freethinkers fail. But as long as people like you keep showing up and fighting for equal rights and fighting for the separation of religion and government, we will succeed. We will succeed because we believe and stand up for science. What do we stand up for? Science! We will succeed because we stand up for LGBTQ rights. What do we stand up for? LGBTQ rights! We will succeed because we stand up for women. What do we stand up for? Women! And we will succeed because we stand up for equality. What do we stand for? Equality! What do we stand for? Equality! And what do we stand for? Equality!
All right, Aron said that his adult brain came up with something.
I remember the other thing I was going to say. So, the last time I was up here, like for the American Atheist National Convention, I was going to come to this thing that they were holding here called Answering Atheists. You guys remember that? Yeah, but when I looked at their program, and everything was something where you would have to pay a fee except for this one talk. There was one talk where atheists could get in for free. Oddly enough, I called about this, and the creation group that I talked to that was setting all that up said that they would let me in for free if I could prove that I was an atheist. Do you all have your ID cards? Okay, that apparently was a problem. I said, don't worry, I'll easily be able to prove that I'm an atheist and I'll be able to get in for free. But then I started looking at their program, right? And so there's only one thing that we can get in to see for free, and that was a lecture by Ray Comfort. And it was only a lecture, so we would have to sit quiet while he lies, falsehood after falsehood, and then that's it. And there's no opportunity for discussion wherein we could record ourselves having conversations either with him or with anybody else. We're allowed in for that thing, and we're kicked out, that's it. So I wrote a blog post saying, I'm not going to this thing, because they're obviously not answering atheists if they're not even hearing our questions, right? So I said the only thing that we had available to do would be to sit in a lecture with Ray Comfort. I said that I've already beaten him in a debate. Matt Dillahunty's already beaten him in a debate. There's no reason to talk to this guy anymore. I called him in my blog post an idiot fraud. I went home from that event, and Ray Comfort mailed me a check for $1,000. So, if you need to make some extra money, I have no idea why he would send somebody $1,000 for calling him an idiot fraud, but if you think Ray Comfort is an idiot fraud, announce that? And you might have a check coming. All right, I'm done.
I guess he has so much money he doesn't know what to do with it. That seems kind of a good investment to send money to Aron. All right. Next, we have Eric Murphy. Came all the way from Texas. Had to drive more than a couple hours. He's going to tell you, I'm sure, about his podcast and stuff. So just to keep it moving, Eric Murphy, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Aron, for putting a little bit of space between me and Kelly. Holy moly. There's no way you can follow that up. My name's Eric Murphy. I'm with the atheist community of Austin. The show that I do is Talk Heathen. And I'm also doing speeches. I'm doing debates. I have a podcast called the Atheist Podcast. And I'm just really, really excited to be here. I got the opportunity to meet you and spend time with people that I care about. So thank you so much. And I wrote a speech, so I'm going to read it. So when I started this speech, I was a bit worried about the tone it was going to take. Several times I had to remind myself to stay neutral and subjective because it would have been so simple to take the easy path and make fun of that museum and laugh at the people who come to visit. I kept thinking that I had to be reserved and respectful. After all, it wasn't their fault that they never learned about archaeology or how to evaluate evidence, or even how to be critical thinkers like you and me. Maybe they didn't have the advantages that you and I had, all the things that enabled us to break away from the irrationality of dogma. Maybe they were never taught that it was all right to speak up when church elders tell you things that defy logic, or that it's okay to live in the real world and not some fantasy version of its origins and history. I thought it would be better to approach the subject with kindness and patience, and try to take the high road and not resort to insults and derogation. And then I thought, fuck that! Stupid ideas don't deserve respect. Stupid ideas don't deserve to be handled with kid gloves, just because it might hurt somebody's feelings if you point out how utterly absurd they are. Stupid ideas should not be tolerated or endured simply because believing them doesn't really hurt anybody. No! What they do deserve is to have a spotlight turned on them. They deserve to be exhibited center stage where everyone can see just how crazy and laughable and ludicrous they are. They should be held up for ridicule and scorn every second of every day, because that's the only way we're ever going to get rid of them. That's the only way we're going to keep ourselves safe. And even more importantly than just us, it's the only way we're ever going to keep our children safe. Because let's face it, how are we going to keep growing as a society? How are we going to keep improving and advocating and raising the quality of life for all human beings if we keep allowing this kind of foolishness to exist? Generation after generation. Don't we want to leave our progeny a better legacy than that? There's a growing movement in the nation right now to turn our country into a theocracy. And I'll be honest with you, that scares the hell out of me. That should scare everyone. Not just each and every one of you here today, not just every free thinker in America or even in the world. It should scare anyone who loves freedom and the right to choose. Anyone who cherishes life and believes in the autonomy to determine how we want to experience this life that we have. We should all be fighting this movement with every breath, with every ounce of strength in us. But how do we do that? Kelly had it perfectly. Through education. We need to get involved on local and state levels, working towards getting the right reforms. Textbooks that teach real science, not religious crap like that abomination over there. We need more emphasis on real history, not erroneous facts. But the story of who we are as a people, the things we've learned and the mistakes we've made. And more importantly, what we need to do is correct those mistakes. We have to reinstill a sense of pioneer and adventure that we've lost. We have an anniversary coming up in a few days. It will be 50 years since Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon on July 20th, 1969. 50 years. And in that time, religion has undermined that accomplishment. Religion has made it seem small and irrelevant and inconsequential, when in reality, it's one of the most significant landmarks of human achievement. And think about what that's cost us. Religion has taken our eyes off the stars and forced us to look backwards at a history that never really happened. It's refocused our vision on an ancient book that has no relevance to our modern world, if it ever had relevance at all. Right? Instead of opening new horizons, it's made the world smaller and darker and uglier. It's targeted our differences and separated us instead of bringing us together. We should all be celebrating this glorious rock that's hurtling through space. And depending on the day of the year, it's moving around 48 million miles or kilometers per second. I got it online. If I got it wrong, let me know. But instead, we're killing each other over different interpretations of a God that doesn't exist. I'd say that's the true definition of insanity. Steven Weinberg once said that for good people to do evil things, it takes religion. Well, I'll go a step further. For good people to believe in batshit crazy ideas like that museum out there, it takes religion. And it has to stop. Now. We have to stop indoctrinating our children with this nonsense. We have to stop being so accepting and keep holding the owners and supporters of that monstrosity accountable for wasting local money and resources. Money that should be used for drug rehab programs, medical care for the eastern part of this state, and education programs. We have to stop shrugging our shoulders and leaving it to others to make a difference. We have to learn to start saying no. No more. We have to speak up and fight back. And every little bit helps. Every time we say no, we're empowering the next generation of free thinkers. Every time we attend a rally or start a protest, we're giving someone something to think about. And it may only be one person, but that's okay. One person can change the world. You never know. It's happened before. So keep being the change that you want to see. Just keep trying to reach people, one human at a time. And if we keep fighting, maybe someday others won't have to. Thank you.
All right, we've got a special event coming up. They asked me to announce if you have a birthday between July 6th and July 9th. If you have a birthday between July 6th and July 9th, come up on stage. Anybody else? Huh, how ironic. Just you.
Yeah, we have the same birthday.
July 9th, exactly.
July 9th. Anyone else? July 6th or July 9th? Is something else happening, or am I just part of the joke now? Oh, all right, everybody, we're going to sing Happy Birthday. Are you ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
You want to sing in the mic?
Happy birthday, dear you two. Happy birthday. Big hand, big hand. All right, now both of you get the hell off the stage.
Perfect.
They don't take a hint, do they? Just go. I once heard that Ken Ham doesn't like it being called a park. The Ark Advent. So I call it the Ark Adventure Park. So that's just good fun for me. We have one last speaker who's going to hobble up here. He's got a couple of podcasts, sometimes does some funny shit. So I have high expectations now. That's going to be a problem. Are you going to make it up without him?
It's a miracle!
It's a miracle. He can walk. No illusions.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for staying out in this heat long enough for me to talk. That's awfully nice of you. So, Ken Ham is a human being who believes that people pretty much stopped having good ideas about the time that the ink dried on Genesis. So he probably won't take it as an insult when I point out that Ken Ham has never had an original idea in his life. This is not the first Noah's Ark replica. It is not the biggest. Wikipedia lists 10, 15 if you count ones that they've torn down and ones that they haven't finished yet. And it's also not the first Christian theme park. I'm sure you guys all know about the Holy Land experience down in Orlando. In case you can't take your kids to Disney because Disney's too gay or the Little Mermaid's too black or whatever, you can take them over to the Holy Land experience and you can watch hippie Jesus in a live-action snuff film. It's great. There's another one, though, actually much closer. You guys probably know about this. It's only a couple hundred miles south of here, the Dollywood amusement park. Have any of you guys ever heard of that one? Okay, that is a super Christian theme park. And let me tell you, I actually used to work there, so I can tell you from experience, that is a very Christian theme park. I get here through kind of a weird path. I actually worked in the amusement park industry for almost a decade before I became an atheist activist. And I worked at Dollywood for a couple of summers. Dollywood, in case you're curious, has a church right there in case you want to take in Sunday services between roller coasters. They have the Gospel Music Hall of Fame there. Let me tell you how Christian this place is. They have a policy at Dollywood that they can't sell any merchandise that has visible cleavage on it, which doesn't seem that weird until I remind you that this is the Dolly Parton themed theme park, okay? Okay, my favorite thing about Dollywood, and you guys probably will appreciate this, maybe you like to collect souvenirs when you go different places. A lot of people like to collect shot glasses. So you can go to Dollywood, you can get a shot glass, but you won't find it listed as shot glasses are for alcohol, and alcohol is of the devil. You'll find them listed as toothpick holders. So yeah, okay, so that's how Christian this theme park is. All over their employee handbooks, it says everything, in keeping with good Christian values, etc. So that forces us to ask the question, if there are already Noah's Ark replicas, and there are already Christian theme parks to take the kids to, why the hell do we need this one? Now, you might be tempted to say, well, Ken Ham isn't making any money off of those ones. He ain't making any money off of this one either, though. So it can't be that. Perhaps Ken Ham was sitting around Williamstown, Kentucky one time looking around and thought to himself, well, gee hell, where will the children of Kentucky go to learn about Jesus? But I don't think that was the case either. I think I can tell you exactly why he opened this park, but to do that, I got to tell you a story about Dollywood. This happened, it was either 2010, 2011, I can't remember which, but it was one of the summers I was there. A woman attempted to go to the park with her partner, and she was wearing a t-shirt that said something along the lines of, "I support marriage equality." She was turned away. The ticket taker at Dollywood said, "No, you cannot wear that t-shirt, that's too controversial, there are children here who might realize that there's such a thing as equality." I don't know, but they turned her away. Eventually she negotiated. She said she'll go back to a car, turn her t-shirt inside out, and they said, okay, you can come in. That actually made national news. Some of you might remember it. It was a little blip on the radar, but it made national news. Hey, this park discriminated against a gay couple for wearing a t-shirt that said they supported gay marriage, right? And of course, that was bad press. So the park came out and said, we're very sorry. Dolly Parton herself came out and said, we're very sorry. That's absolutely not our policy, yada, yada, yada. Let me tell you, as somebody who worked as an independent vendor there and didn't have to sign a non-disclosure agreement because of that, that damn sure was their policy. They were lying. But right about the same time that the most Christian theme park in all of America was coming out publicly and apologizing for discriminating against gay people, one Ken Ham started making noise about a theme park he wanted to make. If I'm not mistaken, that announcement came in the same summer. I would propose to you that the whole damn point was the bigotry. We've talked a little bit already about the prejudice. You guys know about their hiring practices here and everything. The point was the homophobia. The point was the bigotry. Ken Ham said, damn it, I want a Christian park that's so Christian that they don't feel the need to apologize for their prejudices. Again, there's no other reason to have the park. Everything else that it is already exists, is already there. What he didn't have was a park where everyone was pre-screened to make sure that they hated fags like God does. The park opened up. People started freaking out. Like, oh my God, they're so discriminatory in their hiring practices. They make you sign a paper that says that you don't that you don't support gay marriage and that you hate gay people, etc., etc. And I said, of course they did. That was the point. That's why they opened the park. It's all part of this attempt to create some bubble, some dome that they can throw over their children so their children never have to realize that there are people that disagree with them. Their children never have to realize that gayness exists in the world, or that other religions exist in the world, or that anything that we represent, that evolution or science exists in the world. It's all part of this effort, the creationist theme park, the Christian movies that I have to watch every week, the Christian music they listen to. It's all part of that same bubble. And you have to ask yourself, if you're keeping your kid in a bubble and you're so desperate to do it that you're willing to spend millions upon millions of dollars of taxpayer money to make it happen, what the hell are you hiding them from? Well, I'll tell you exactly what they're hiding them from. They're hiding them from what they might have accidentally encountered at Dollywood, and we call that human decency. They spend decades trying to get their kids all the way to adults without ever running into human decency. Guess what, guys? That's why we're here. They can try to hide right here, but guess what, guys? Right over the hill, here's some human decency for you. You can't hide for long. Thank you.
All right, that wraps up this part. But what we're going to do next, and we're doing it right now, we're going to gather up to walk 2 by 2 to the Ark. So if you want to come on over behind this beautiful blue Prius over here. I think I've got one of those, but mine's white. It's adorable. Come on over right now as I banter on. We're going to walk over 2 by 2, and then we will unfurl the infamous